Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have a way to combine the trend of coloring books with card making. I have seen a lot of coloring books out there and not many of them have really caught my eye, but then I had an opportunity to review these Color It coloring books. So this is a sponsored post. I was provided the coloring books, and the reason that they appealed to me was because of this spiral bound top and the fact that it has artist quality paper and perforated pages. Because I mostly do card making, I wanted to be able to take the pages out of the book and incorporate them into card making, so having those perforated pages was great. But also the spiral bound was really cool to me as well, because it means that your coloring book will lay completely flat. And so a lot of coloring books that I've seen, you have to kind of like prop one of the pages open, and then even the one you're working on isn't totally flat. And a lot of them don't have a convenient way to get them out of the coloring book, and so you'd probably have to like cut them out or something like that. And when they're all bound together, it just has a different feeling to it. I kind of like this style. I think this more suits the crafter. And I also like the nice thick lines on these coloring books because it makes it a little bit more forgiving. When they have really thin lines, it makes it harder to use some coloring mediums that have an opportunity, or have a chance of bleeding. Like Copic markers, they bleed really easily, and so if you use thin lines, you're more likely to get that bleeding, and so I tend to like thicker lined stamps for that same reason. And so I am showing you the 3 different coloring books that they have on offer right now at colorit.com. And since this is a sponsored post, they are also offering a chance for you to win. They sent me 3 additional coloring books to give away to you guys. So I encourage you to check out some of the links in the video description and let me know what you think of these coloring books based on the review throughout the video. And I have 3 books, so I have 3 winners, but because of the weight, it will be a little bit more expensive to ship, and so I'm going to say US only unless you'd like to pay the difference in shipping. So I wanted to show you how you could use this coloring book with many different coloring mediums. You may have seen earlier that I tore out a page, and that is the blotter. And it's just another thick page from the book that you can tear out and place under the other pages so that you won't get any bleed through. Now, right now, I'm starting with the Amaze-A-Pen gel pens. These are a fun gel pen that I've been using for a while, and I like them because they are really, really glittery. And they give a nice even coverage. They flow pretty smoothly. What I have found is now that I've had them for a while, they are continuing to flow smoothly, but one of the key tips with gel pens is to make sure that you are storing them with the point facing down rather than storing them flat or storing them with the point up, because you're really trying to keep that ink near the tip. And I have found that to generally help these pens stay in good condition after several months. And so I've found also that a lot of these coloring books have these really thin pages, which works well for simple mediums like the gel pen here. I think you could use these gel pens in pretty much any coloring book, and for something like the colored pencils. But then there are going to be some other ways that you can use this Color It coloring book that isn't as common. However, I wanted to show something. I've never really seen anyone do this before with coloring books, but again, I'm not like a big coloring book fan. I wanted to see, could I color a large area of a coloring book more quickly, because some of these pages are like really intense and take a long time to color. So I thought, I bet you I could color them with distress inks. Now, a thin paper is going to absorb the distress ink really quickly, so I don't know if this would work as well on some of those thinner coloring books, but this nice thick artist quality paper, it works very, very well. What I'm doing is taking 4 different colors of pink distress ink, and I am layering it on to create a faded out look on these large flowers. I could see this working best with more full page abstract designs. I think this would be a little bit harder to do on the mandalas because there's a very hard edge to them, like you need to stop coloring at a certain point. But when you're really trying to cover the entire sheet of paper, this works out well. So distress inks are a great ink for blending, and they really work well and blend together well. So if you're new to distress inks, That's an important tip about them. And you can get darker color by layering more on. However, I have a large collection of distress ink, so I'm just going to use 4 different colors. And basically what I'm doing is taking that lightest color and filling it out to the very edges of the flower. Then I'm going in with my next darkest color, filling to a smaller part of the flower, and so on and so forth with the darker colors till I get to the center. And I think my center color is actually the festive berries, which is a red, but a very pinkish red, and just filling in the center of the flower. So that's a way that you could cover a lot more ground a lot quicker with coloring books if you wanted to use the background for, say, like a card base like I'm going to do later on in the video. One of the more interesting mediums that you can use on this particular coloring book is watercolor pencils. Here are my Inktense pencils, and a lot of thin papers do not work well at all with water because they will pill up quite quickly. However, the thicker the quality, the better quality the coloring book, the more likely you are to be able to use a wet medium. However, it needs to be barely wet. Think of it like the dry brush technique, where you put just the faintest amount of water, just enough water to activate the watercolor pencil, to activate the Inktense. And that's all, because too much water is going to pill this paper. While it is a thicker paper, it is not watercolor paper. And so you're not going to be able to do crazy watercolor techniques with it, but it does have some ability to work with watercolor. You could do the same thing with watercolor from a palette. You would, again, just make it very dry watercolor. Use it like a dry brush technique, just enough water to get everything going. With Inktense pencils, the reason that they appeal to me with a coloring book is because you could color several, you could color the whole area really of the coloring book before you add any water, because you don't have to worry about working quickly or anything like that, because it doesn't activate until you touch it with the water. And then once it dries after being activated with the water, it is permanent. Other watercolor will continue to react with water the more you add water to it, but Inktense pencils stay permanent. Also, Inktense pencils offer a really bright color, and so when you are adding just that little bit of water, you're still going to get a great look. So I think the Inktense pencils worked out well for it. The thing that I was most curious about, though, when I got this coloring book is if I could color with Copic markers. Because Copic markers definitely, again, take a thicker paper. Not a watercolor paper, but a thick paper, because they will bleed through very easily, so that is why the blotter sheet is important. This was definitely the one medium. I think markers in general would be the one most important to put that blotter down so it doesn't bleed through. With the Copic markers, I was even able to get a little bit of blending. It's not going to be as good as on Copic quality paper. However, you can get that look of some blending, and so it is another fun way to use your Copic markers if you really like them. A good way to get some practice in, but know that the paper is going to react a little bit differently than what you might normally use, and so you might have to do a different, like a lighter hand to it, because if you saturate the paper too much, it's going to start to pill up again, because it is not the thickest paper, but it is thick enough that it can take a little bit of water, the Inktense pencils, or even Copic markers. Now, the last way that I wanted to show you that you can color with this book is the very traditional way, the obvious way, with colored pencils. A lot of people are using colored pencils with their coloring books and getting great results. And I'm just showing you what you could quickly do with some Prismacolor pencils, but I think that since that's the common way, it's a little bit less interesting to note, but of course you can use this coloring book with the colored pencils. As you can see throughout the video, I am able to completely lay each drawing flat on my surface, which to me is so important. It makes it so much more comfortable to color. You could hold this coloring book in your lap and color while you watch TV. A lot of the other coloring books, you kind of have to hold it open, fold it over, then it's all warped. I'm very much happy to see that spiral bound feature. Now, you can see that I finished a coloring page, the one that I was using my gel pens for, and I just trimmed it out to a card size, added a black border, and then I took this thanks die. I made it glittery with the same gel pens, and now I'm just adding a little bit of glossy accents over it. Again, one of the reasons these particular coloring books appealed to me is because I knew that they would be like the whole point is to tear these pages out, to use them. And so if I'm going to go through all the trouble of coloring something, it would be great to make a card set with it. I mean, it's fun to color, it's relaxing to color, but rather than just have a stack of coloring books when you're finished, now you could have a stack of cards to give out and make some use with it by just tearing out those perforated pages and trimming them up into simple cards. And that way you get this combination of this relaxing, fun hobby of just coloring and the more practical card making hobby where you actually have a result to produce, and you could send these out to family and friends, or again, card drives are excellent. I know that there's quite a few out there for the holidays. And so I am, again, just like I said, finishing this off with some glossy accents, which is, a more traditional card making supply. It's going to just add a little bit of shine and really make that particular die cut stand out. That is going to be it for my review today. Remember that this is a sponsored video by Color It, where you can also have an opportunity to win these coloring books if, after all of that information, they are appealing to you. Remember to check out the links in the video description. Let me know what you think of these coloring books in a comment for your chance to win. It's going to be US only unless you're interested in covering the additional shipping cost. And thanks to Color It for providing the coloring books for me and for you guys as subscribers. Also, there is a link to their email list where you will get some free coloring pages when you sign up for their email. So definitely check that out. And thanks for watching. Bye.